Devin from Weston Audio again, and I am coming at you with another official demo of a new module. I'm super happy to get out into the wild, as it were. So today we are going to take a look at the new H1 Analog Harmonizer. And essentially, the basis of this module is two identical digitally controlled analog oscillators, and they derive their pitch in a ratio of some sort based on an input from CV or frequency tracking a external oscillator in, which is how we're using it right now. So each side, channel A and B, has all the outputs in a box. Here you have the three primary waveforms of each oscillator. You have a mix output controlled with these pots, and a CV and a trigger output. And those CV outputs are selectable to output either a voltage proportional to the Osc in frequency or a quantized version of the CV that goes into each CV input, making this usable as a dual quantizer as well. Additionally, there's trigger in and trigger out, which, as you heard in this demo, I have some quantizing CV coming in for channel 2, and it's only changing notes with the trigger when the sequencer is hitting on one of those 16th notes. And I also, for fun, patched the trigger out, which triggers every time the quantized note changes into the trigger in of the AD110 kick drum. So you were hearing the kick drum go every time that little yellow light moved. Each one of the channels also has analog through 0 FM, which I was playing with a little bit by piping in the signal that it's also frequency tracking, which can give you some cool harmonic layers. I also played with turning on the internal soft sync from both the feeder oscillator and the other channel's frequency. So that's a little overview of the panel and the layout, and kind of some noodling around to hear a little bit of the sound, and but we'll dive in a little more and get into the different modes of operation of this thing. I went ahead and turned the video lights off for this first part so you can kind of see how the buttons light up. It's still hard to capture on video, but I'll turn the video light on for the next part, which kind of will wash out the button lights a little bit, but hopefully make it easier to see. So with that, let's move on to the next part of the video, and thanks for watching. A couple different ways to use this, and we'll start off with the most simple mode, which I will call main mode, which the other two modes are both a type of chord mode, and we'll get to that. In the main mode, with an oscillator that I've got patched into the Osc in input, which we will hear through this mixer output. The mix output contains these 4 controls here, and one of them is simply a pass-through of the signal here that is going to Osc in. And that's just a little sequence that I've got going. And then the other 3 are the 3 primary waveforms from each of the oscillators mixed together. So there's 2 identical channels, A and B, This is the triangle of A and B. And then this is the sawtooth of A and B. And this is the square of A and B. So now you hear the original signal plus the sawtooth from A and B. Now, each side, when in the primary main mode, can be selected with this display button here. Flip back and forth. And you'll see this little pulsating light. And what that's showing is the nearest note that the input signal is tracking. And the illuminated solid button is the ratio of that channel to the tracked input signal. So in this case, it's at a major third. And now it's at a minor third. And the same with this one. It's up here at the fifth, but you know, change it to whatever we want. Additionally, each channel has in this mode has a rough octave control. Okay. Now, these are being tracked to the input. Let's go I'm going to change to just this one that we're hearing, right? For clarity. The second page of main mode, you hit this option button, which we'll get to in a second, a little more into that. But this one with the circle around it is the option button. Option display flips to all of the steps that are enabled if you were using one of the CV inputs. In this case, we're looking at channel A. If we use its CV input, we can essentially use this like a quantizer. So if I patch in something like an LFO, the LFO is changing the pitch ratio of this channel based on the CV. And just like any quantizer, or a lot of quantizers, you can enable and disable the notes that it can go to. So basically like a scale mask. Okay. There's also a trigger input, which if trigger in is enabled, it won't change quantize steps unless you issue it a trigger. And every time a particular channel's quantize output changes value, as in it changes a note, then the trigger out will issue a little 1 millisecond pulse that you can see on data there. That little blue that appears. Okay. Now back on this option key. Let's go back to the mix. The option key, depending on what your mode is in, it will you will see if applicable options are on and off. Okay, so for the example of the trigger in for channel A, I was enabling it and disabling it while holding this option. The other options that are available are a mix pad, which is a 9 dB pad on the mix output, which allows you just to have more headroom on the mix output. And then there is track and free, So again, say we're listening to just one channel. In main mode, when this is on free, it's not following that input anymore. And if you run it like this and turn the quantize type to off, it will basically act like a regular analog oscillator, meaning its pitch will be a function of whatever goes into this CV right here. So I'm sending it that same LFO from before, right? Now you can certainly keep quantize on, and now it's only going to allow it to go to even increments on the chromatic scale. And then if we go back to track, it's following the oscillator in input. You can also each channel has a type of sync, a soft sync. The first click, which is going to eliminate white, is soft syncing to the frequency of Osc in, and the second click is yellow in color, and that means it's soft syncing to the opposite channel. So you can set them up to cross sync if you like. So A syncs from B and B syncs from A. There's also, depending on the mode, a CV2 option, which is just another CV input here. And the only difference between this one and the other two is that its range is from -5 to +5 volts, and these two are from -3 to +7 volts. In the main mode, if you send a CV, such as that same LFO from before, to CV2 and enable that CV2 option, it will translate this ratio, transpose it based on the CV. Which can allow you to basically transpose and then quantize on top of that using the original CV input. I'll leave it up to you to figure out a good way to use that. Finally, back on the quantize thing, there's also a micro tuning interval. So there's 12T, that's your standard 12-step even tempered scale. And then off is no quantizing of the CV input. And then micro tune is 24 steps. So when you're on micro tune, you get a full page of, and then a second page of steps that you toggle between with the octave, with shift octave up and shift octave down. So page 1, page 2, page 1. If you're into micro tuning, quantizing. So that's main mode. The second set of modes is chord mode. And the first chord mode is when it's the first click will get you there and it will be illuminated white. And this is stored chord mode. The first page will show you the same pulsating dot of the tracked input if it's not on top of another note. And then the other two are the two notes of the chord for channel A and B. So the yellow one is channel A, and then I flip and I can move channel B. So in that respect, it's sort of like having both of the two channel note ratios of normal or main mode, only now you have them on the same page, and the second page is a bank of 12 stored chords. Okay. And those chords, in this mode, CV1 is dedicated to select the bass pitch of the whole thing when you are not on track mode. So if you wanted to go to free mode, and just control this pair of two notes with a CV, then you could, okay, you can do it that way. The second CV input for channel B is used to CV select any of these 12 chords, which represent a note. So you can see it. And when you're in this screen here, the blinking notes will show the CV selected chord notes and then the original bass chord node. And if you want to make a new chord or overwrite any of the defaults, you just, select your notes like I was showing here, and then you go back to the second page and you hold whatever one that you're operating in, and it will do a little blink like that, and you're off. And then also in both of the chord modes, if you want to send a CV to the auxiliary CV or CV2, you can enable that option, and that will just parallel transpose the two notes of the chord based on the CV value. The second chord mode, which happens when you are when you see yellow here, is Diatonic mode, and this will take the selected input note, whether it be on the Osc in frequency or when on track mode, or the CV based on this CVA input when it's on free mode, and give you a diatonic chord of that note. And this is useful because, so in this example, the sequence is only playing notes in the C major diatonic scale, and it means that all the chords generated are also going to have notes only from that scale, and they will sound pleasing. And it has a different sound to just straight up parallel shift, which is what you're going to hear when you're like on this main mode. You can hear the difference because I have the same bass major triad set here, but this is a parallel shift, and this is diatonic. On the second page of diatonic, you'll see the scale key for this diatonic. So I'm playing in C major diatonic, I'm in C diatonic, and then you select major and minor by holding this option key, and octave up gives you major, octave down gives you minor. So now I'm playing in C major while the chord is set to C minor. And you can, so that is the selection of the diatonic scale. And you can also, in this mode, if you use the CV2 option, that will simply CV control whether it's in major or minor based on the CV. So if it's a CV that quantizes closest to a black note anywhere, it's gonna put it into minor. And if it's a CV closest, that Quantize is closest to any of a white note or in this row, then it's gonna be major. Not B major, it will be major. Got it. Okay. So those are all of the modes. So let me also show, I will actually stop the sequence. There's also a bonus tuner mode, and the way that you access that, which can, and this can be useful for when you're patching in an oscillator in. It's accessed by holding Option, hitting the middle of the white keys, or the F here, and it will let you know that if you're holding Option now, it will be flickering with kind of a color in between the white and the yellow. And the chord, the tuner mode will show, it will blink on the row of keys here, the closest note that it hears, and the fine tuning will show up on the octave here. So if it's really off, it's gonna be, if it's greater than 8 semitones or 8 cents, it's gonna be yellow, and you can see it's sharp. And as you get closer, it will turn to white. And then as you get closer, it will stop blinking. And then when you're within 2 cents of the note that you're shooting for here, it's going to lock up solid white. And it's also going to essentially turn, while you're in oscillator mode, sorry, when you're in tuner mode, the two oscillators will basically turn to almost, they will go as low as they can so that you won't really hear them. That's what is happening here. And then as soon as you leave tuner mode, you will, they will come back on. Pull out the CV here for a little drone. One thing that you can also do in all of the modes is you can enable detune. So this is going to try and keep everything, you know, as in tune as it can. But if you want to use it for like doubling or something, like set them all to the same frequency. You can see they're quite locked up here, but you could take this detune and maybe deliberately detune it. And maybe I want to take the other one and make it flat by a little bit. And now it's super huge. Or you could go an octave down there, an octave up here, and, you know, really fatten things up. So that's what the detune option gives you. You can leave detune enabled and just simply tune by ear to, you know, where you want to be. But you see how I had to turn, since it's a shared knob, if you know, flip to the next channel and detune it, then you need to come back to where the other one was set to before it has any effect. And that's so that it's not constantly overriding your setting. But yeah, you can tune, you know, to tune by ear like that, or if you don't want to bother with it, you can disable it, and it's going to lock to a detune value of 1, which renders this not doing anything. Each channel of H1 also has fully analog through zero frequency modulation. And say that I had the same oscillator it's tracking to patched in. Now you'll probably notice that the right hand attenuator and input is normal to the left. So that's why I was able to put a signal into just the one jack, but you can certainly put one into here and have separate signals modulating them. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful in showing some of the features of the H1 Analog Harmonizer, and I hope that you find new and cool ways to use this module and that it's hopefully something a little bit different than what's out on the market. And appreciate y'all watching, and yeah, keep on patching.